I'm going to improvise. Listen, there's something you should know about me, about movie drafts. An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious. The smallest seed of a draft pick can grow. It can grow to define or destroy you. And that's what we love about movie drafts. I cannot wait to draft, gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to the 2010 movie draft.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 2 Ps on a podcast, a brand new episode, but it's actually 3 Ps on a podcast. We're lying to you this week, and we're also not reviewing a singular film this week, so we're doubly lying to you. We're doing a goddamn movie draft. You damn right. We got Mr. Jay Ledbetter back on the show. He hasn't been on. You haven't been on with the two of us, though, have you, Jay? I don't think.
No, I don't think so. No,
but you've been on with me a few times. Now, are me and Nick supposed to refer to you, Jay, as the 80s champ tonight, or can we call you by your name? Or what do you prefer?
Just champ for short.
Just
a
champ.
bygone era. Those were the good old days.
Yeah, those were the good old days, yeah.
You can call me that if you want.
Champ is here. Jay Ledbetter. Nick, how are you? I guess I'll say hey to you as well. How you doing?
Two things. Number one, we can never do a cold open again. That was better than anything we have or will ever come up with ever again. And I'm missing Tiffany Stratton and Rhea Ripley for this. So let's draft some fucking movies.
All righty. 2010 is the year that we're drafting tonight, and we're going to have 6 rounds. Each of us will have a team of 6 movies when it's all said and done, and then I'll throw this poll up on Twitter a few days after the episode comes out, and we'll see if the champ remains with the belt over there in the corner, if somebody else takes it for 2010. Real quick, I'm going to go around the horn. Nick, you chose the topic. You know, I picked the first draft that we did. By the way, this has been months in the making. We asked Jay to come on like back in July and do this, and we're finally getting around to it. Sorry about that. We like to plan ahead.
It's this guy's fault. Like this guy.
Yeah. Wow. But we did 1994 when we started up the movie drafts, because that was what I felt like was the most prominent year for me as a movie fan, and really kind of turned me into a cinephile in 1994. So that was what we kicked off these movie drafts with for 2 Ps. And so we're going to kind of go back and forth, and each of us are going to pick a topic. So this time around, it was your turn, Nick, and you chose 2010. Real quick, why did you pick this year to draft, and what were you doing? What was Nicholas Haskins doing back in 2010? Where were you?
I mean, we have the 80s champ on the show. He's the 80s champ from the So I Married a Movie Geek movie drafts. We clubbed winners in a back alley, threw them in a dumpster, and stole this from So I Married a Movie Geek. May it rest in peace in pod fade heaven forever. We love you, Justin. But so he did these tournaments. He did decade tournaments where he would get different groups of people on for every single year. And I thought, what was more appropriate to have Jay Ledbetter on? I mean, obviously, we love Jay, all your work on In Session Film. I mean, and again, I've shared the mic with you on a few drafts now at this point. So I felt like it was appropriate to kick off another decade countdown as we draft movies. I felt like it was just appropriate, like I said.
14 years ago. That's fucking weird.
Guys. I was in college. I was graduating college mid 2010, by the way.
Okay. All right. Jay, where were you in 2010, man? What was Jay Ledbetter? You're a young buck, I think, compared to us at least. But then again, who isn't compared to me? But what were you doing back in 2010, 14 years ago, man? Where were you?
I was a proud member of my high school graduating class in 2010. This was like peak fledgling cinephile era. This was when I was going to like all the midnight screenings of all the blockbusters, when you actually had to go at midnight. That not like today when you can go at like 5:30 in the evening.
I miss midnight screenings.
Midnight.
I know.
Yeah. And then it was me just staying up until like 3 o'clock in the morning watching movies on my laptop that my parents stupidly gave me. Just like getting really into movies. And then I got into college, and then movies took a back seat to college things. Yes.
All right. So, but little sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I was still ramping up into the movie thing, and then ramping down a little bit as I went into college in late 2010.
Yeah, no, that's fine. 2010, I was on my second marriage, guys. I was marrying my current wife. We got married in September of 2010. We've been married 14 years. I don't think she knows that. I need to go in there and remind her that she's still married to me. To that thing on Nick's camera there. Yeah, how could you leave that, though? Let's be honest. I didn't look like that when she married me. That's why I don't think she knew what she was.
He doesn't allow you to leave is the trick, folks. You get locked in the compound and then you're not allowed to leave.
But I was deep in. That's right. I was deep into the restaurant business. I've been in the restaurant business really my whole life, and around that, bartending, beer, wine, the whole thing. And I was deep into that. I was working like 3 different jobs at the time, and I was just doing my thing. But I was deep into movies. A lot of these movies that I wrote down on my list of ones that will eventually get chosen by somebody tonight, I would think. I've got about 23 movies on my list that I love from this year. Obviously, it's a top-heavy list, I think. But in looking at the list, I don't know. I want to ask you guys, but I've been looking at some of these movie titles, and I'm just like literally baffled. Like, it makes my brain hurt that these are 14 years old. I mean, I feel like some of these movies just came. Like, you could release these movies this year, and they would be in awards contention. What do you guys think when you were looking at the list? Anybody?
I mean, there are some. It's real top-heavy. You're right, but there are some that are very definitively like, I saw this in high school and this spoke to high school Jay. And then there are some where it's like, this has only gotten better with age. It's a very diverse list of movies as well. It feels like you don't get this kind of variety as far as like mid to high level budget movies as much anymore. Like, there are some like classic teen rom-com type of like zany comedies. This was kind of I would say the tail end of that Farrell Apatow of their like peak era.
Sure.
And then you do have like the prestige stuff that you always get every year, and then possibly the best film of the decade. So, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. Coming out in 2010 too is the best film of the decade. I think I know which one you're talking about. It actually was my best film of the decade when I did that episode back on the old top 5 format a couple years ago. We'll get into that though. So the draft order, there's 3 of us obviously here tonight, Nick, myself, and our guest Jay. The draft order, we're going to let the patrons for 2Ps decide the draft order whenever we do the movie draft. So I put all of our patrons in a randomizer and I spun it. And guess who it landed on, Nick? You won't believe it.
I already know it was Brad.
Fucking Brad, this guy. I mean, this $1 a month that he's been giving me, and he's got so much power. Jay, you don't know this, but we recorded last night, and we spin a wheel where we, do retro reviews or whatever. We're doing a couple for Halloween. We're doing horror movies. And 43 movies got submitted, and it lands on Brad. And now here he landed on him for picking the draft order. So he decided to let Nick go first tonight, which I think was a dumb move. But anyway.
So here's the thing, though. Anything that happens tonight, just remember, it's Brad's fault.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bar none,
100%.
Brad's fault.
100%. Brad is to blame for everything you're about to hear on this episode. Except for the cold open, because that was beautiful. That was not Brad's fault. It was all Jay's fault.
We can't do them anymore. I tell you,
we're done.
You just bring me in for all of them.
I was going to say, I'll just commission you and to do all the cold opens
for you.
Send me little 10-second clips, not just playing before every episode. So we're going to do, Nick likes to call it serpentine. That's too much. It's a snake draft. I mean,
I
it's
like
a snake
words
style
with
draft.
syllables, Gerald.
I'm not, pinkies out over here. It's just a snake style, serpentine, whatever you want to call it, draft. So we go 1 to 3 and then back around 3 to 1 and so on until we get through the 6 rounds. And you can see the order on the draft board there. Nick is going to go first. Jay is going to pick second, and then I will get the double pick and third where it wraps back around. So, Nick, if you're feeling good, man, you chose the topic. Shocking, unbelievable. I can't possibly guess what you're going to pick at number 1. But go ahead and tell everybody what you're picking and why you picked it.
Well, I can't do it until we officially start the fight, gentlemen.
Do the thing.
Let's get it on. We clubbed winners in an alley and stole that sound drop from him, too. Although I'm pretty sure he sent me that for a live stream for The Cure that we did one year. When we rated Hollywood hunks, I'm pretty sure he, Chris Brayton, Shampoo, maybe. Oh, God. Good memories.
You just clipped it from one of his episodes.
Good memories. But my number one, to bury the lead, is super, super deep. Jay already sort of probably mentioned it. I already know you mentioned it because it's also my favorite movie of the decade. Mm-hmm. Absolutely number 1 with the bullet is David Fincher's The Social Network. Now, Gerald, I have a very complicated relationship with Fincher. He sucks most of the time. especially these days.
I don't really condone that statement, but
my God in heaven, did he create? He crafted an absolute masterpiece here with Andrew Garfield, who at least I had never heard of up until that point. Jesse Eisenberg, of course, as Mark Zuckerberg. The way that the film flips and flops back and forth between the different legal proceedings that he's involved with at the time, as we watch the story of the rise of Facebook, and you can't make 100 million friends without making some enemies, or whatever the tagline of the movie was. This movie's been talked about exhaustively on a ton of best of the decade lists at the end of the 20-aughts or whatever. So I'm not going to say anything else about it, but just open it up to you gentlemen for thoughts on that one.
Jay, what do you think? First of all, does David Fincher suck? Let's clear the air here.
That hurt me there. I was, we did a while ago, we did a David Fincher movie series, and it was just banger after banger, man. Even the ones that
greatest hits,
like,
man.
I'm like, woo, this guy is, he might be, as far as like batting average, talk slugging percentage, kind of get into the advanced metrics there. He's like elite as far as modern directors are concerned. He's one of my guys, 100%. And this is maybe his best movie. I would say, if I had to put it, I'd say it's his second best movie, but it might be the best movie of the decade. That's how good David Fincher is, for the record. But it is so incredible. It really, to me, is a generation defining movie. I think if you look in 30 years, if you want to say what was the world like from like 2005 to 2012, it's like, go watch The Social Network. I don't care how factually accurate it is. It's more about capturing a moment and capturing an idea than being truly like a recounting of what it was actually like with the creation of Facebook. It's so entertaining. All of the like filmmaking flourishes. I think about them being in that club where it's so loud you can't hear anything, and they use the subtitles. There are so many like tricky things that Fincher pulls off in the movie. I love it. I was really hoping that somebody would like one particular movie more that is the other kind of obvious pick for number one that I don't like as much. But unfortunately, we have three intelligent people on this podcast.
Right. Well, I know Nick's in love with this movie, as am I. And I mean, he knew it wouldn't last.
As soon as Brad picked me to pick first, Gerald knew it was gone. Gerald knew he wasn't getting it.
But I mean, you guys both said it, and I think echo my sentiment that this is the best movie of the decade. I mean, I think almost objectively. I mean, it's like just such a time capsule for kind of like what you're saying, Jay, with social media and kind of the uprising therein. But then Fincher has this really cool way of storytelling where it's very like dark and melancholic, but it was also such a hyper energetic time, especially if you were like into the internet and technology, and just captures all that. It's got the courtroom drama aspects. It has an absolute banger score from Reznor Ross that I listen to this day. I mean, it's just so fucking good. My favorite movie of Fincher's is Seven. I would put this one number 2, though. I don't know. What one were you referring to, Jay?
I think Zodiac is my one.
Zodiac. Okay. Yeah, that's also a great one. It's also a good one. Hey, I like it, Jay. I don't think
banger.
Jesus Christ! I'll bring down the average. The average on the call for Zodiac's about a 6 out of 10 when you throw my score in there. So,
oh my god! All right. Well, The Social Network, not to anyone's shock, is off the board. Nick takes it number 1. Jay, our guest, Champ, our guest, you have the next pick from 2010. What are you taking first, man?
This is really one of those head versus heart type of picks. I know what I should pick, and I'm not going to pick it because I don't like it nearly as much as some other people do. I think I'm going to go with a hugely successful film of this year, a film that was very important to my experience at the time, because this was the year, again, where I was going to college. I went to see this movie with my mom, and a large part of this movie is about one of the main characters going to college. So she cried as much as I've ever seen her cry in a movie when we saw this in the movie theater. I'm going to take Toy Story 3. I think the best Toy Story film. I think one of the best Pixar films. I remember a moment watching this movie where I was like, oh my God, are they actually going to do that? Which was very stupid in hindsight, but I was like, is this going to be the darkest children's movie of all time.
Right.
Obviously, it was not going to be, but I think it speaks to how successful the movie is that there was 10 seconds where I was like, they might actually do it. It's just a great film, funny film as always. Again, my favorite Toy Story film. It kind of plays on some of the things that the other Toy Story films had kind of played on before, but does it in a new, unique way. The animation's incredible. Toy Story 3.
Bam. Great pick.
Imagine the world we'd live in if they had made that decision. It just Rogue One the toys all at the spoiler alert for a 14-year-old movie, but imagine the world we would live in. The darkest timeline I think we'd be living in right now.
Yeah. Well, I've been a vocal proponent of this as being definitely like top 5 of Pixar's canon, but it's my favorite Toy Story movie. I remember being like pissed that I liked Toy Story 4 when it came out because I thought this was like a perfect
well, maybe you'll hate
send
5.
Right. I'll hate 5. I still have time to hate something. But, I thought it was a perfect trilogy. It ended on a perfect note. It was very bittersweet, kind of like what you're saying, Jay. And man, it just did such a great job of connecting to so many different like age brackets, which is really what the series culminating. I think the first one was in 93 or something, or 94. And all the way through to here, we're talking about 2010. It just really gathered all those years together, all those memories for these characters. And the parents are, I mean, a lot of people were young when they saw the first one and were parents when 3 came out. So it's like you're going through the whole gambit of emotions with these movies. And I think it's a flawless movie in Pixar's canon. Nick, I know you like it, but you aren't in love with it like Jay and I are, right?
It's good, but I rate 1 and 2 way higher. I really, really adore 1 and 2. I think 3's good. It just didn't hit with me the same way that it hit with everybody else. I wouldn't, it's not like a Zodiac kind of thing where it's like it belongs over there in the back room of Gerald's compound or whatever.
I don't know. All right, Toy Story 3 off the board. I was going to take that one.
Smart pick, though. I mean,
you stole that from me.
in terms of like when you're rounding on a list of 2010, though, I think it belongs on the list regardless. That's
to me that wasn't the obvious pick. I'm sure maybe Gerald will snag it, but we'll see.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, I think I'm going to, but you know what, Jay? I kind of echo. This is a movie that's kind of like not aged exactly well for me. Like when I rewatch it, I don't find as much in it as I did on my first like 1 or 2 watches back in 2010, 2011. But it's Christopher Nolan's Inception. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. I mean,
yeah.
If you put yourself in that when it came out in 2010, I mean, it was a really revolutionary, groundbreaking piece of filmmaking with the different effects. And obviously the performances are all top tier in the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, who was at the height of his power in Hollywood at this point and really hasn't come down. I mean, the guy is unstoppable in this movie. We have future Oscar winner Cillian Murphy, who often works with Christopher Nolan as well. Marion Cotillard is probably my favorite part of the film. Just such a quiet, sweet, like subdued performance that's kind of always lingering in the background. And she has a beautiful performance in this film. It's not my favorite Nolan by a mile. I mean, I like it. It's probably like in the 7 out of 10 range for me. I know people like our friend Paul, Nick. I mean, I know people are literally like in love, in bed with this thing. But for me, it's like, it was what it was in 2010, which was like, holy shit, what did I just see?
Yeah.
Right. But then when you watch it now, or even 5 years later, it's like, it's good, but it's like, it just doesn't carry that same weight with it as it did the first 1 or 2 times I saw it. So it has lost a little bit of value with me over the years. But obviously, it's still a great film. It's one of the best filmmakers of all time, frankly, and Christopher Nolan. So one of the more recognizable titles in his catalog, too, I would say. So I'll take Inception first. Is this the one you were referring to, Jay, I assume? The kind of no-brainer?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's going to get you some votes for sure. That's going to pull well. It is a movie. I'm kind of with you. It's like 3rd tier Nolan for me. I actually think my hot take is that Nolan's last 3 movies are his 3 best movies. That's an unpopular opinion, but I think he's really kind of peaking. And if you love being explained to, you'll love Inception. I'll tell you what. You'll love it. I mean, when
that's like the whole script is literally 2.5 hours.
There are some incredible set pieces in there. It is one of those kind of, you see it I think it's one of those, you see it when you're younger and it blows your mind, and then it doesn't age well, to your point, Gerald. It is a good film, but it is nowhere near the top of my 2010.
It's fine. It's mind bending. Nick, are you a fan of that? I don't actually know if you like this one or not.
Inception's a masterpiece. Well, I'll agree with Jay that probably like Dunkirk's my favorite Nolan by far, and I mean Oppenheimer is mind blowingly good. Like the more I watch Oppenheimer, and I've probably seen it 3 different times now, the better it gets. Like it's insane how much better that movie continues to get over time as I explore it. But well, I still have a very special place in my heart for Inception. I really, really do love it. So yeah, I up over top of this bald egg here.
So I'll say it's I am to Inception as you are to Toy Story 3. That's sort of the flip there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I get it. So I feel like I had to kind of take that one. Just it's Nolan. It's one of the bigger titles. Yeah, basically. So I'm kind of battling with what to do next. Obviously, I don't want to mention the one that's kind of on the other side of the coin here in case it somehow makes it back around to me. But for my second pick here, wrapping back around, I'm going to take one of the most rewatchable films of the year, maybe even more rewatchable than The Social Network for me, just because of how of an easy watch it is. And you can put it on the background, or you can really sit down and focus on it. You can grab somebody that's never seen it and watch it with them. I just watched it with my son about 6 months ago. He loved it. He's 11 years old. It's Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Damn it. I thought I was going to get this one.
I just love this movie, man. Like, I could watch this every week on a loop. I mean, it's just so good. The cast, and you look at 2010, the cast that's in this, and you look at them now. I mean, how many quote unquote superhero actors are in this movie prior to being superhero actors? I mean, it's crazy. You got Brandon Routh in there. You got Captain America, Chris Evans in there. I'm a sucker for Michael Cera. His like level of like boyhood charm and like shyness is just like every time I'm just grinning ear to ear when he's on camera in any movie that he's ever in. I just love that dude. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was my crush in 2010, and frankly, she still is. I loved her.
I was going to say, that hasn't changed. Get out of here.
That hasn't changed. Aubrey Plaza's in there. Mae Whitman, Brie Larson, so Captain Marvel's in this movie. But yeah, I love this movie, man. Scott Pilgrim's the way to go. I couldn't let this one not make its way back around to me, which it sounds like maybe it wouldn't have. You guys are fans of Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim here?
Love it. I love this movie. I think as far as capturing what a video game movie is, it is the greatest video game film of all time. I think it is really great in that regard. Edgar Wright is just such... when he is making this kind of movie, I think he's so locked into sort of nerd culture, and I think that's what he was so good at for so long. He's kind of strayed away from that, and we'll see where his career goes. I didn't care for his last film. But at this time, he was really capturing, in a similar way as The Social Network, like really locked into the zeitgeist at the time. I feel like he was really an of-the-moment filmmaker. I love this movie. So rewatchable. You're right. I wanted this one to bounce back to me. So in that regard, I think it's the right pick. And I also think we're done with like my tier 1 picks. So
yeah, I got one more. I got one more, but yeah, there were 5 that were like on the top heavy from but that's also my personal preference. I may tell you guys if it makes it around and I pick it, you guys might be like, I may not have even taken that in 6 rounds. I don't know, but I love it. But Nick, or Jay, you're up next, man. Toy Story 3 in round 1. What do you get to take in round 2, buddy?
We're in a real weird spot now. There are like 8 movies I could pick, and I would feel equally iffy about them.
I'm in the same place looking at what's left for me.
I am going to take a film that I think has really become a little bit of a quasi-cult classic. I think it's really gained a big audience since it came out. I'm going to take Ben Affleck's The Town. I think
good one.
That is a film that it's Heat light, and I love Heat, so I really love Heat light. It's a really, again, it really captures that culture, that Boston towny culture. I think it does a great job with amazing set pieces. Ben Affleck is just like a good director. He really does a great job with this movie. It's so much fun. It is also kind of harrowing and dark at certain times, and it has some great kind of mystery elements to it. I just think it's a hell of a ride. So I'll take The Town.
Yeah, I love Affleck and Jeremy Renner bouncing off each other in that movie. Just,
I think Rebecca Hall is amazing in it too.
Ah, so good, man. Blake Lively. I mean, that's a great film. And the opening scene with the bank robbers and the nun mask, and then the kind of showdown at Fenway Park towards the end of the film. I mean, there's some iconic imagery for me just because I'm a huge Boston sports fan. So I love seeing a lot of that stuff. But I love The Town. Nick, you a fan of that one, man?
Such a good movie. I mean, it's every person that goes before you. That's the heartbreak of these drafts is you just watch the, things that you would you would pick get sniped off the list, and you got to kind of rejumble all the rest of the players in your head. But I mean, yeah, I haven't watched it in a long time. Like I gave up on Affleck as a director after he subjected me to Live by Night. I haven't watched another movie he's directed since then. Not even revisiting any of the old ones, but I did really love this movie when I first watched it. I really need to revisit it one of these days.
Air was fun. It's not awesome, but it's fun.
Which one?
Air, the Nike.
Oh yeah, Air.
Well, that's the Air. Michael Jordan Nike shoe one, right?
Yeah,
I like that one. That was a good one. All right, Nick, what are you going to do, man? You got your prized social network to start things off. What's next?
Man alive, I'm torn between three. I know the third one's going to go if I don't pick it. So I'm just going to have to settle with 2 out of the 3. My number 2 is a movie that just one of my absolute favorite directors, even if he hasn't necessarily blown me away recently, which would be Darren Aronofsky and Natalie Portman's Oscar-winning turn in Black Swan. I mean, just the way that Clint Mansell takes Tchaikovsky and turns it into this just brutal, amazing score, while Aronofsky turns Black Swan into this like Kafka-esque kind of dreamscape almost. And I mean, Portman, we've all seen Natalie Portman in a million things at this point, but I mean, just the range that she has in this movie and the performance that she's able to pull off in this thing. I absolutely love it. Like, talk about movies I have watched probably 50 times, 100 times. Like, I love and adore this movie. I had to put it here. Like, well, we'll come around to my next pick after that, but gentlemen, just thoughts on Black Swan before we move on.
Well, I want to hear what Jay has to say, but this is the 5th one for me. So this is my top 5 from 2010. Easy. I mean, this is the one that I was talking about. Kind of everything after this one kind of dips down. A pretty big gap between this one and my next one when you're talking about those top 5. But I love this movie, too, for all the reasons you said. I mean, Natalie Portman's kind of dark, eerie performance in this movie. Oscar winner, right? She won the Academy.
She won the Oscar,
yeah. Well-deserved, and she's another one, much like I said with Leo earlier, that just hasn't let up, in my opinion. I mean, she always puts in quality work, and this was something that was extremely different for her, and it's still a standout in her career, I think. I mean,
oh yeah,
Jackie, perhaps, but I mean, this is a standout performance that's a little bit different than anything else she's ever done before. So I love this movie. Jay, what do you think of this one?
This one is soured for me a little bit. I watched it, I think, a couple years ago, and Aronofsky is just a guy who now at this point I just watch his movies and I'm kind of like, you're kind of just like a trite visualist, which, look, I appreciate a stylist, but it is a little shallow, I think, but it's definitely impactful. It definitely leaves an impression. It again is one of those movies where I'm like, it's good. It's just not one of my favorites of the year. I think if you just give me 3 rounds, as in my 18 favorite movies of the year, personally, I think it would be on the outside looking in by a little bit.
Oh, okay.
It's a totally sensible pick. People love it. And also, like, you guys love it. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and that's interesting to see it's interesting to see the kind of measurement there, too, because it's top 5 for me, but it's outside the 18 for you. It's just interesting, and it is. I can see it being a divisive picture.
Yeah, we covered it on the pod a couple years ago, and I think when you it's interesting when you just watch a movie and then when it's like, okay, we have to talk about this movie for like an hour. and then you kind of exhaust it in like 25 minutes, and all of a sudden you're like, I think differently about this movie than I did 2 days ago. It's interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, I get that.
That's
Nick,
me every time Gerald makes me review a movie, pretty much.
Anything. I mean, every time I make you watch anything. I think I got lucky with The Fall Guy and fucking, what was the one we talked about last night? You kind of liked
Saturday Night.
Saturday Night. Yeah,
Saturday
you
Night
liked
was
that
pretty
one.
good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was
The
good.
secret, gentlemen, is to review a movie and only 30% of the time actually talk about the movie. That's what our podcast does. And
I came on that podcast. I know that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the review for True Romance to start, and it was like 2 hours. And I'm like, if I talk about the movie or what's going on? But I love the experience. I'm just messing with you. Nick, you get 2 picks, man. Black Swan, and what's the Swan Princess counterpart there?
So there's a sentimental pick that I'm going to not pick here just yet to see if it maybe makes it back around to me. I don't think it will, but I'm going to pick a film that first time through, I think it's good. I think it's very, very good. But then when you get to the end of the film, it completely recontextualizes everything that came before it, and subsequent rewatches of the film turn it into this dark, immensely moving tragedy. I'm talking about Scorsese's Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, the huge, amazing cast in this movie. And I mean, spoilers. Michelle Williams in this movie as well. But I mean, it's set up as just kind of this mystery thriller, right? Their cops go into this insane asylum to try to figure out like what happened, like what, missing patient or something like that. It's missing patient. And then as the film slowly unravels, you realize that the whole thing has just been set up as this gambit to try to, as a last ditch effort to try to bring Leo's character, because Leo is really they're putting this whole thing on for him to try to avoid having to basically lobotomize him and just basically destroy the rest of his life and make him live as the vegetable. Like I said, it recontextualizes the entire movie, because then when you rewatch the movie, it's this terrible, terrible tragedy of all these people and all these characters. And it's this most impossible thing. Like, his wife literally drowns all their children. You know, it's such an absolutely impossible thing to imagine. And it's this terrible thing that if they can't break through to him, if they can't reach him with this one last ditch effort, then, you know, they're going to lobotomize him because he's a danger to himself and everybody around him. I adore this movie. I love revisiting this movie. It's a movie that I always tell people, if they're going to watch it twice, because like I said, the second time through is a completely different ballgame. It literally is an entirely different movie. And I can't say that about a lot of films, even ones with like twist endings or whatever. I adore this movie. I love this movie so much.
Got me back for the picking one before you were going to pick it, because this was going to be my pick, and you summarized it perfectly there. It really does. At first glance, this is kind of like a weirdly schlocky horror thriller from Scorsese, and then at the end it becomes this very moving piece of like, look at the lengths they went to try and salvage this guy's sanity. And it's not only moving, but it is fun. Like, it's a fun movie. And I love that about it. It's Scorsese, so it's immaculately made. It's a great film. Would have been my pick right now. Hate to give you credit for it, but it's a great pick.
Yeah, I will take all of it. Give it to me. Give it.
It is a great pick. Scorsese kind of tapping in back to like his Cape Fear roots and like Taxi Driver. And it's like, I mean, it's a dark film, but I do love the twist in the film that I didn't see coming the first time I watched it. I'm trying to recall, but I'm almost positive I didn't see that coming. And it really is a jaw-dropping moment that, to Nick's point, demands a rewatch, which is not always the case with Scorsese, because they're long, they're, daunting at times. But when you watch a movie like Shutter Island, you go, holy shit, wait a second, what? And you want to buy a ticket to the next show so you can rewatch it and figure out what you missed. And
I mean, specific to this movie, I maintain that knowing the twist in this movie, like, there's some movies like knowing the twist going in, like, you don't want to see it, and like not knowing the twist the first time great. But I think that I think once you know the twist, it just makes the film better. It literally improves at least a whole star rating to me once you contextualize everything as literally this last ditch effort to save this guy, to save his sanity before he has to be lobotomized. It's good.
It's a good pick. It was on my list too. It probably would have been my next pick had it made it back to me, but it didn't. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Take that.
Champ, you're up next, man. You got Toy Story 3 and The Town thus far. What's your third pick?
All right, I'm stuck between two here where I'm thinking one of them I don't think will come back to me and one of them might. So I'm going to pick the one that I'm pretty confident wouldn't come back to me. And Gerald, you can rebuke this if that is actually not the case, but I'm going to go with the Coen Brothers True Grit, which is one of the all-time Coen Brothers like growers for me. I remember seeing it the first time and being like, oh, this is like good, but it's lesser Coens. And I've watched it several times since. It's weirdly become a go-to Coen Brothers for me. And I just think it gets better every time. I think it's funnier every time I watch it. I think I appreciate Jeff Bridges' performance more every time I watch it. It is a very moving film, similar to Shutter Island, where it is this genre exercise that you wouldn't think on its face would kind of be this very moving movie, but it ends up being that at the end. I think it's one of the more interesting Coen films, just as far as it's one of their most successful films financially, and also, I would say, slightly more populist than we're kind of used to from the Coen brothers. But that works really well in this movie. I love it. And it just looking at this list today, I was like, I'm due for a rewatch. I got to watch that again. I love True Grit.
Yeah. And Hello World, Haley Steinfeld, too. I mean,
yes,
introduced
exactly.
to her in this movie. Did she get nominated for the Oscar for that, Jay? She did, right? For supporting?
She did, I believe. Yeah.
I think so, too, yeah. Yeah, no, great movie. It would have made it back around to you, though. I hate to tell you.
Oh, man.
It would have.
Well, let's hope the other one doesn't then. I'll feel real stupid.
But I do love this movie, and I think it's one of the better. I mean, you categorize this as a Western, right? I think it's one of the best modern Westerns for sure, too. And yeah, I need to revisit this one though. I got to be honest.
It's a Western and also kind of a play on a Western at the same time. It's a Coen.
I don't think I've seen this since it came out, to be honest. Which is, I want to rewatch this one. Nick, you seen True Grit?
No, it's a blind spot for me this year. I still haven't ever had a chance to check it out, which is, I mean, kind of sad for me too, considering how much I love the Coens. But yeah, it's a good blind spot for me still.
It's a
really
good one.
Biffed this pick. Good grief.
No, it's a good one.
Yeah, this would have come right past me. Like if it would have somehow slipped past again
or something for it.
And Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a remake of a John Wayne.
Yeah, the John Wayne movie. Right? John Wayne won the Oscar for it, and Bridges did not.
Yeah, it's a good one, man. Great pick. So I know what two I'm going to take here back to back, and they're both in the action comedy realm. And I know sometimes when you do these drafts, you want to be strategic. I don't give a shit, guys. I'm about to have 3 rewatchable bangers back to back to back if you count Scott Pilgrim. First up, I will start with Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass. Let's do it. Yeah. I love this movie. I am unapologetic in love with this film. We were just talking about the world being introduced to Steinfeld in True Grit. Same thing could be said for Chloe Grace Moretz in this movie. I love everything she's done since. Nicolas Cage, man. I mean, getting to be this kind of anti-hero / superhero kind of comic book inspired character in this film. It's just bloody. It's in your face. It's vulgar. And it was something that when all this Marvel stuff started kind of kicking up dust, we didn't have anything really like this. This is obviously before the Deadpool days. And this is kind of like B-level Deadpool before Deadpool, at least in cinema. Mm-hmm. I love Kick-Ass. How do you guys feel about this movie?
I like it. It's a fun movie. I haven't seen this one in a very long time.
Same.
But it's due a rewatch. The Matthew Vaughn thing is interesting because I feel like he's kind of doing the same thing over and over, which makes me forget how fresh this felt at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
It really did. And yeah, I remember especially, being 18 or 19 or whatever I was at the time being like, yeah, you get those superhero guys.
That shit was so good, man. Come on, give it to me. That shit was so good. And then Nick and I covered Argyle this year, and that was Vaughn too, right?
Yeah.
what a drastic downfall in the span of 14 years. Because I did not like that thing.
Mild defender of that movie.
Oh yeah,
it has a vision.
Okay,
sure. Yeah, I don't know. We're not going to do the Argyle debate right now, but there's stuff in that movie that's.
You're right. You can't take that away from that movie. It does have a vision. Whether you gel with it or not is kind of where I think the line lies with that one.
That was one of those where I was like, I appreciate when a movie has a point of view so much these days that I kind of gave it bonus points for having that at all. But yeah, in hindsight, I am like, that thing might like really suck. But,
right. Well, let's see the bright side of things here, guys. I get what you're saying. So for me, another action comedy that is just the rewatchability is through the roof on this one too, but it's The Other Guys from Adam McKay. I'm going to take that one next. And, this just came up recently on our show because Nick and I did the Mount Rushmore for Michael Keaton. And this was so close to being a mention for me on that because he is so funny and memorable in this movie. And we're talking about an illustrious 40-year career for this actor. And I just remember him so vividly in this film. He was just awesome in this movie. And it's just a lot of fun. And you have characters like, obviously, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson pops up in there. Rob Riggle is in there in a smaller role. And they have all these really cool cameos. But at the core, just Will Ferrell at the height of his Will Ferrellness post SNL, just riding off Anchorman and just doing all this great comedic stuff in cinema. And I'm a big fan of his, so I love seeing that when it came out too, just because I loved him from SNL and everything. And, Mark Wahlberg, I don't know, say whatever you want to say. I don't know. I thought he fit this role perfectly.
Oh, he's good.
He's not going to. Yeah, he's great in this movie. It fit him to a T. So I love rewatching this one whenever it's on TNT or TBS or whatever. I'll watch 30 minutes of it and just smile. Adam McKay, who is a filmmaker who, up and down. No pun intended. But I like him. I like a lot of stuff that he does, particularly the comedic stuff. We were talking about Anchorman. Specifically, he did that whole trilogy. And he obviously has a rapport with Will Ferrell. And you can kind of see that come out in The Other Guys, too, when you start incorporating some of the action stuff there. So not all comedy. You guys are fans of The Other Guys?
Aim for the bushes. I was just looking through his filmography to see, is that the last Will Ferrell vehicle that I really like? And I think it is. And that's important because Will Ferrell, I credit with establishing a large portion of my sense of humor at large. He was the guy for me. And I actually met him once, and he was super nice. And he was wearing a green Puma jumpsuit. He signed a shoe for me. So shout out Will Ferrell. But
wow,
this movie is... It's so much fun. It's very funny. And the interesting thing about it from the Adam McKay perspective is the credits for this movie are like a slideshow on Wall Street corruption. And you can just see him pivoting to serious, quote unquote, important McKay.
Right.
So
sure. Yeah.
That's an interesting element of the movie too. For better or worse, that's what he went to.
It's a jump starter for sure. I would recommend you guys checking out Will and Harper on Netflix if you haven't yet, a documentary that features Will Ferrell kind of doing a road trip across country with his trans friend, one of his male friends for many, many years on SNL that transitioned to female, and they go across the country together and kind of reintroduce her to America. And it's a really touching, and it really shows him in a light that I would have never thought. It just gave me a newfound respect for Will Ferrell too as a person. But I've always been a big fan of his. So when he popped up in The Other Guys, this was like candy to me on Halloween night. It was great. So that's going to be my pick. And Jay, we're back to you, man. Yeah. I know you think it's getting slim over there. So let's see what you're going to work out there.
I think this is the last movie that I out and out love. I'm happy it came back around. And it does relate to, Gerald, your and I's podcasting history together. We recently, semi-recently, recorded True Romance podcast directed by Tony Scott. I'm going to take Tony Scott's final film, a great movie, Unstoppable, runaway train flick, Denzel Washington, Chris Pine. Nobody made movies like Tony Scott. When Tony Scott died, a certain kind of movie died. And Unstoppable is really just a credit to that, proof of that. It is a movie that has such incredible set pieces, so many practical elements to it. Denzel is never bad. Chris Pine as like the guy striving to be Denzel is great. And it's so tense. You really feel yourself kind of clenching up at certain moments where you aren't totally sure if it's going to end well or not, which similar to that Toy Story 3 thing where it's like you kind of know in hindsight that it's going to work out, but the filmmaking is so successful that you don't know in that particular moment. It's such a good movie. Tony Scott, late Tony Scott is like, he's an editing maniac. He's like almost experimental with his filmmaking, and that's something I love so much about it too. It's a really good flick.
And this is pure action too. I mean, there's not a lot of, I mean, you know, we get to know the characters and stuff, but there's not a lot of like backstory and like super deep connection. This is just like Tony Scott going, here's what I can do, guys, and I'm going to fucking do it. And I can't believe you took this from me because I know you're a TS
and any
fan.
Backstory is done while the train is going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, people are hanging off of a train, you know. So, Unstoppable is a great action flick. Nick, have you seen Unstoppable?
No, I never even heard of it.
You got to check it out, man. If you like a runaway train movie, let's put it that way, it is a good one. Nick, you're up next, man. You get 2 picks on the heels of Shutter Island. What are you taking?
All right. Well, okay. I'm looking at what I've got left. Hanging out over here on my list. Which my list, like to contextualize this for the champ and for the audience out there, Gerald knows. But my pool is always much shallower than everybody else's is because I've seen nothing. Okay.
Naturally.
We're lucky I could round out enough movies to fill out a draft board for some of these years that we do on the show. But I mentioned a sentimental pick when I was picking my 2 and my 3, and I'm kind of glad that this one did come all the way back around to me. I judge movies very harshly. This came up recently when we reviewed Horizon Part 1, which I have a feeling when I see Horizon Part 2, I will love Horizon Part 1 a whole hell of a lot more because all the stuff they set up in it will actually pay off and not just be infinite setup and it's 2.5 hours into the movie. Here's more new characters you've never seen before. But I kind of judge movies that they cut into multiple parts harshly because of my first real experience with a movie that this happened with. And we're not going to mention the author, so put that over here to the side at Gerald's little fun camp, okay? But it's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, sentimental because this was literally the first Harry Potter movie I had ever seen, and I'd never read the books. So this is my literal first exposure to this entire franchise, to this entire universe. This is by far the best of the movies in the entire franchise because they took that book, they cut it in half, and they made a perfect actual movie out of half of a book. Like, it's not just like it's all rising action and then it just stops halfway in the middle. It's not just like complete, like when they did it with Mockingjay with the Hunger Games, when they did it with the last Hunger Games book, it was just like they drew everything out, they dragged everything out because it was just like, oh my god, can we please get to the point? This was like, I had no context for any of this, no sense of any of the history of any of this or anything, but I still absolutely adored this movie. So other people probably have much different opinions and thoughts about the franchise than I do, but like I said, this was literally my first ever exposure to it was this movie.
I didn't hear anything you said because I was trying to get it to fit into the square on the draft board. Can you repeat all that?
The favorite thing to do on a rewatch for this, when you watch this on YouTube, Jay, is just to watch the draft board. Watch as Gerald fiddles with it and tries to fit words and stuff into those boxes he made down there.
Oh my god! Deathly Hallows Part 1. I did a Harry Potter, I binged all these with Dan. Producer Dan came on our Patreon and we watched all these movies back to back, and I had never seen any of them. That was about 3 years ago, maybe. And I remember this being one of my favorites. I thought it was a perfect pick up and drop off point. And then of course it was okay for me because I was watching them back to back and I was able to go right into part 2 a couple days later. I can imagine it would be frustrating maybe back in 2010 knowing you're going to have to wait, however many years it was for part 2. Or
the frustrating thing is I watched part 1, or I watched this one, and then I went back and watched the whole rest of the series, and then watched part 2 in theaters. Hated part 2. Hated it because it's the antithesis of part 1. It does not stand on its own as its own movie.
You a fan of Harry Potter in general there, Jay? What do you think?
Oh, I am a capital P, capital G Potter guy.
There it is.
I grew up with Harry Potter. These were the midnight showings that I was going to, were the Harry Potter ones, among many others. But these were the ones where, you know, me and my friends were all dressing up and stuff, being like really embracing the dorkiness of it all. I adore Potter. If there's ever a like fandom that I was in, it would have been Harry Potter. Like, I grew up with the books. I think the first book came out when I was in like first grade or something. So I literally like grew up with Harry Potter. So it was super important to me. And this is a good movie. There are some movies that are better than others in this series, and I think this is one of the better ones for sure. It is very character focused in ways that not necessarily all of them are. But, you know, Deathly Hallows Part 2 is like an action movie. And this movie is more about, you know, setting up that battle through character. And I think it's very effective in that. So, yeah, great pick.
Yeah, long live Harry Potter, man. Good pick. You got another one to follow that up, Nick, as we serpentine. Hang on a second. As we serpentine back around.
He's got to use words with more than one syllable. There you go. Basilisk back around. There you go.
Yeah.
What do you got, man?
Oh man, see, there's a whole bunch of movies on here that I haven't seen in a long time, and I liked them when I watched them, but not confidently enough to put them on this list. So I'm gonna go with a movie that I did really enjoy from this year. I mean, obviously, I picked Social Network as my number one. Y'all know what I was rooting for to win Best Picture at the Oscars that year, but of course, we know that the Oscar went to The King's Speech, which is what I will pick for this one here. This is still a really, really solid movie. Colin Firth, I think, is really good in this movie. Really, really great performance. I do really, really. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's one of those. I think the worst thing about it probably is the fact that it's very. It's a movie that's designed to win Oscars, if that makes sense. Like it's a movie that's kind of made to like give me awards. I want to win an award. Please, can I have an award? Like it's that kind of. It's Leo in what was this stupid movie where the bear ate him or whatever the hell that was? That piece of shit.
The Revenant.
Yeah, that movie. It's like that. It's like please give me an award. But First performance is still really good, and I enjoyed my time enough with it. I mean, it was not nearly. I mean, think back 5 years, gentlemen, to when you were doing your best of the decade lists on whatever show you were doing best of the decade lists on. King's Speech didn't sniff a whiff of anybody's best of the decade list by a country mile. And it's way down here. What, pick 17 for the entire? No, 13. I can't count.
It might have made Queen Elizabeth's best of the decade.
Probably.
It could have.
It's good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it well enough. But we're getting to that point in the list where it's kind of like you got to start digging. You got to start digging deep.
What's interesting about King's Speech too, when you team it up against something like Social Network, is that it kind of tells the tale of the state of the Academy at the time, because I often wonder with wins like Parasite and everything everywhere all at once in the last few years. I often wonder if Social Network and King's Speech were against each other now, what the Academy would do. I think it was a much older Academy back then, and that movie obviously speaks a lot more to the elder sensibilities, I feel like. But to your point, it is a great movie, and Colin Firth that's probably the performance of his career in that movie. So it has its accolades for sure, but it's nowhere near some of the ones that we've already mentioned, in my opinion, in terms of like awards material. What do you think over there, Mr. Awards Watch? Am I right?
Yeah, it's like a solid movie. And I think a lot of the time the worst thing that can happen to a movie is it winning Best Picture. I think that's true of Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think like the cineast crowd kind of started poo-pooing on that movie when it was racking up awards. And I think this is certainly a case of that, where everybody is like, it beat Social Network, therefore it stinks, which isn't true. It's solid. And I'm not sure I would go any further than that, but it's solid.
Yeah.
Enough said.
All right. So Nick takes The King's Speech, which was the Oscar winner for 2010 for Best Picture. Jay, you're up next, following up Mr. Tony Scott. How do you do that? How do you follow him? I don't know, but what are you going to take next?
I'm going to take this in an interesting direction. And my first pick was a third film in a franchise that many years later got a possibly too late, maybe unnecessary fourth entry. And this pick is going to do exactly the same. I'm going to kind of class it up a little bit, take a documentary film. Jackass 3 is what I'm going to take here, which I think is the best Jackass movie. I think it is a movie that weirdly, almost accidentally, really dips into the idea of aging and how that takes a toll on people. And there's sort of this, it's a really interesting film because everybody was sober for the first time on this movie because Steve-O needed to be sober and everybody kind of embraced that. And so that adds both an element of camaraderie that wasn't all the way there and necessarily in some of those other, the previous films, which are all about debauchery, and also this true sense of dread doing some of the stunts that they're doing, where they do not have the benefit of chemical imbalance, making the things hurt a little bit less. I think it's so funny. You're either a Jackass person or you're not a Jackass person. I'm a Jackass person. Jackass 3.
I also love how you preface with classing it up, and then you're like, Jackass. It's Jackass 3D, though, right? Wasn't this the one where they leaned heavy
Jackass
into
3D,
the 3D?
correct. Also, I'm glad you mentioned that. Some of the best 3D ever, in my opinion. I think that is true. I think the 3D is so good in this movie.
Yeah. Makes it even harder to watch some of those stunts, though.
Yeah.
All right, Jackass 3D. I'm going to be giving my final two picks here. And this is tough because I have, with the exception of Inception, all of my other ones are kind of funny. But I'm still inclined to take a movie that
you
I
don't
feel
think
like...
Inception's funny?
I mean, if you're a dark dude, I guess. I don't know. Not a lot of punchlines in that movie. I'll tell you what. Let me get Miss Emma Stone in Easy A. I'm going to take that one next.
Yeah. Good flick.
Type it into the field here. I mean, this really lets her shine. I mean, Superbad was before this, and we were kind of introduced to her there. She was obviously in a supporting role in that film, just kind of the object of their affection, whatever. She's a few years older, and we see her in Easy A, still playing in that high school comedy. But Easy A as a film is really cool because it is self-aware in the sense that it pays homage to a lot of the 80s and 90s kind of like teen comedies that it's borrowing from, and also kind of playing on the Scarlet Letter. And it does a beautiful kind of symmetry of those two things, I feel like. I remember specifically, because I'm a big fan of Can't Buy Me Love with McDreamy from the 80s, and they do a whole bit in Easy A where they recreate him cutting the grass on the riding lawnmower and the whole thing. And just taking like lesser known parts of 80s kind of movie culture and incorporating it into Easy A. And Emma Stone was an absolute darling that was just so easy to watch in this movie and really kind of catapulted her, I think, from that point forward in 2010 when this movie came out. So I know it's another, quote unquote comedy on my list, but I love this movie. So what
You're
the
a
hell?
funny guy.
Yeah. You guys fans of Easy A? I know we like Miss Emma Stone, of course.
This is really the one where you're like, is Emma Stone the most charming person on the planet? Like, is she the most likable person in Hollywood? This was really kind of her coming out party. And it's a really deep cast, too. And I remember Stanley Tucci being really good in this.
Oh, so good, man.
Another
so
one
good.
I haven't watched in a little while, but I just remember having such a good time with it. Such one of those that you can turn on at any time and be happy. You can do it while you're folding laundry, or you can really sit down and pay attention to it, and you're going to be satisfied.
I am, for my last pick, going to take a movie that I assumed would still be here at the end of the draft, and it is. But also I assumed that horror would not get any representation on this GD draft, with the exception of maybe Shutter Island. We just don't have a ton of horror. Black Swan, I guess.
Which is extremely horror adjacent, but nowhere near like actual horror.
Let's throw some horror on there, guys. Let's do it. I think this is dollar for dollar one of the best American remakes since the year 2000 at least. Matt Reeves, we all know what he's gone on to do. We saw his kind of infancy stages of his dark style of filmmaking in Let Me In. And that's going to be what I take for my last pick. It's a remake of Let the Right One In, which frankly is better. But again, from an American viewpoint, I think Matt Reeves did something really special here. This is a beautiful kind of friendship story about a vampire who can't age, a young girl, and she befriends a young boy that's living in the city that she happens to be passing through. Richard Jenkins, who is one of our great American actors, plays her handler, and he's phenomenal in this movie. You know, he's tasked with basically going out and getting her people to eat. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it. But it's a beautiful, all that's kind of happening. That horrific stuff is kind of happening in the background while this kind of innocent, like preteen childhood coming of age friendship is like playing out before our eyes. One of the great swimming pool scenes in this movie. I don't know. Jay, have you seen Let Me In?
This is the first blind spot of the draft for me.
Okay, all right.
I've never seen it.
So I won't give it away then, but there's a really, really good horror trope-esque scene in a swimming pool when the vampire comes to take care of business. I'll just put it that way.
I need to see it.
Chloe Grace Moretz again, by the way. I got her on her twice now. She's on my team twice, but she stars in this movie as well. So yeah, Let Me In. Anybody, it's October. If you haven't seen it, you're looking for a good vampire movie to watch this Halloween season.
True.
It's a very tender, kind of beautiful film that has a lot of like horror stuff going on in the background. So Let Me In is going to be my final pick.
I mean,
Jay,
if you want to see a good, horror movie in that, just watch the original. The original is phenomenal.
it is really good.
The original is a
really good.
really, really good movie. I didn't even put it on my short list because I don't think it's a patch on the original. So I was just like, it's just gonna. For me, it would have just reminded people of how much better the original is than it. I love the original. The original is really good.
I think that was 07 or 08, but I really do like the original also, and I think it is a better film.
This isn't a bad movie. It's not bad, but I mean, it's one of those American remakes where it's just like, just go watch the original.
Mm-hmm. That's my wild card pick and my horror representation.
Horror guy had to get his horror in there.
I had to throw some horror on there. There's a couple others that I'll mention when we get to honorable mentions if they don't come up. But Jay, you are up for your sixth and final pick, buddy.
This is a real tough choice. I'm stuck between, horror guy had his horror pick. Does pretentious guy have his pretentious pick? Or do I pick the most low? It honestly might be lower brow than Jackass 3. That's the other movie.
Wow, that's
a really
gambit.
Saying something.
That's a pendulum to swing there, buddy.
I think just saying that out loud, I don't think I can take Jackass 3D and that film back to back. So I am going to go a little more art house. I'm going to go indie. And I am going to take Blue Valentine. I don't know.
You son of a... Come on!
Really?
Oh, wow. I was really hoping that was going to stick it out for me. Come on!
I'm taking
Dude, I'm still depressed from seeing that movie. I mean, I saw that 14 years ago. I haven't recovered.
Yeah, I maintain that this is one of the two scariest movies I've ever seen. Especially now that I'm married. It is just like... Oh my God, the deterioration of this relationship between Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams is heartbreaking, cringe-inducing, earth-shattering, especially when you see the ascension of the relationship, the highest of the highs. You've got these two incredibly charming performers. Ryan Gosling playing a ukulele somehow isn't super annoying. And you totally see the appeal of both of them and how they were drawn to each other like two, gravitational forces who were revolving around each other for their whole lives. And then to see where it goes and to see, Ryan Gosling kind of let go of himself and also let go of the relationship while they have a kid. It's just like... It is one of the most emotionally impactful movies of the 21st century, I think. It is such a devastating movie. It's weirdly a movie, despite it being, again, truly devastating to me. The two scariest movies of the 21st century to me are this and Synecdoche, New York, which really makes me confront death in ways that I would really rather not on a given day. But this one, especially now that I'm married, it's like, man, this thing could turn. It could turn. And it's really no fault of anybody in particular. It's just, movement. It's just the passage of time and transition in ways that you never could have foreseen. And it's a really great film. It's really hard to talk about too, because it again is like super devastating, but it's great that also it was devastating for Nick that it got picked right before he was going to pick.
I was so hoping. I was like, nobody's going to sneak in on the last pick with Blue Valentine, because it's, people talk about movies that are hard to watch. It's such a hard movie to watch. Like, and it's because there's a realness and a rawness to it that Gosling and Williams, are able to pull out of those characters. It's such a good movie, but it's probably one of those movies a lot of people talk about, like a really gross movie or really whatever movie, like they'd never watch again. This one, I think I've only ever watched it like twice. I don't think I've gone back to it again, because it's just so hard emotionally. It really is devastating. You nailed it exactly perfectly. It's devastating to watch.
Sometimes you want to turn away from the screen because like a clown is cutting off a guy's leg. And then sometimes you want to turn away from the screen because two people are like almost forcing themselves to have sex with each other because their marriage is deteriorating. It's crazy.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mentioned in the top of this episode how, I got married in 2010. I remember going to see this in the theater with my wife, and we just both left. And she's a huge Gosling fan, of course, because he's almost as good looking as I am, so she likes him. We both left, and you're just so like heavy after this watch. I can't remember. That was 14 years ago. I can't remember if there's been another movie that I've left the cinema like physically feeling like I just fought somebody or just got my ass kicked, or like you're just so like, oh, what do I do now? How do I recover from that? And I haven't rewatched it in 14 years. So.
Now that's just every week for him when he records 2Ps with me, and I break his heart week after week after week.
Oh my God, man!
The like love motel. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Bruce.
Nick, you're gonna round us out, man. You got the dead last pick here in the 2010 movie draft. Blue Valentine got stolen from you.
I was really hoping, because listen, I got like, the really weird, obscure movies that maybe get one performance nomination, but nobody's ever heard of them, and nobody's ever heard of them again after that year goes by and that award season is done. I got a couple of those left in here I could grab.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. There's another movie in here that I won't grab it because of how not beloved it is nowadays. Oh God, all right. So let's do this. Ignore the director of it. Okay. Just put the director of it aside for just a moment. Focus on the amazing performances. Christian Bale won an Oscar for this. Melissa Leo, I also believe, won an Oscar for this. Amy Adams, Mark Wahlberg, The Fighter. That's where I'm going to leave it. Like I said, it's
great movie.
It's between that and we'll talk about it in honorables, but like it's a bunch of, this was a big movie in that year, in that award season, because it had like that performance in it. But it's like, I don't know, like I'm left with of the stuff that I've seen from this year anyway, of a little bit of a pittance. So that's going to be good movie. Really good. Obviously David O. Russell directed, but
he's a cool guy.
Really, really good movie. Talk about like Christian Bale. This movie, this is 2 years after The Dark Knight. Christian Bale all throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s was giving us reasons why, every single performance, why he's one of our greatest actors, today. And this is just another reason why. Completely transformative performance. There it is. It is. That rounds out the 2010 draft. It was either that or the goddamn Minions, guys, and I couldn't do that to anybody listening to this right now.
Namely, Loy Sauce. He hates the Minions for some reason.
I should have picked it then. Damn it.
The Fighter, I love that movie. David O. Russell aside, in that whole thing or whatever, but just looking at it as a film, Christian Bale is one of those actors, though. Look at the run that he had for about 10 years of just, and every role was like he's doing something different to his body,
some
and like
huge transformation,
losing weight or gaining weight or it's just, the guy's fucking insane. The Machinist was before this, I think, which he was even less. weight wise. And then he went to The Dark Knight. And then he went back to this. It's like, the guy's crazy. I can't believe he's still alive, honestly, with what he did to his body. But I think this is a great film, and I haven't seen it in several years. But I remember when I saw it, and particularly Bale's performance, it was just, like you said, it was transformative. It was just like you were there watching these actual people and not watching actors. And it was something special about that movie, despite the person that was directing it. I think it's a great film. Jay, are you a fan of that one?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan. It was the movie that, or one of the movies that made me really fall in love with Amy Adams as a performer, and also just as a person in general. The when I got married, we did a like newlywed game thing on our honeymoon, and one of the questions was, "Who is your celebrity crush?" And without a moment of hesitation, my wife was just like, Amy Adams, and she was entirely correct. Justice for Amy Adams. We need her back to doing good stuff. Sounds like Night Bitch isn't really going to be what many people.
No, watch out now. I'm all about Night Bitch.
I haven't seen it.
Everything.
But it's not going to be the awards thing that people thought, at least.
I don't know. Watch out now. She's playing a mother, dealing with,
Gerald's my Night Bitch. That's why I'm excited to see it.
Being a mom's not easy, so I'm holding. She's still in my predictions, Jay. I'm holding out hope for Miss Amy Adams.
We'll see. I mean, she's one of my favorites. I wish nothing but the best for her. But the Fighter's a good movie. Good Wahlberg too.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, great film. We got multiple Wahlberg on this draft, and we got multiple. What else we get multiple of? We got multiple Chloe Grace Moretz. We got Leo in there a few times.
Zuckerberg, because all these movies got talked about on Facebook, probably.
I think only
Facebook movies.
Only one Steve-O.
Yeah, only one Steve-O
he was in
in
Deathly
3D.
Hallows, I think. He was somewhere in there.
Only one Steve-O in 3D, though. Deathly Hallows was in 3D. Okay, so let's do some honorable mentions real quick. Jay, you don't have to, just whatever. I know you said it was kind of a shallow pool, but what movies were you kind of debating and throwing out there that didn't make the board?
I said it was a shallow pool, but there's actually some movies I like on here. The one that I was gonna pick instead of Blue Valentine as the lowest brow movie was MacGruber. I love that movie.
So good.
I think it is so funny. I love Will Forte. He's a very specific kind of performer, so I understand why he never really became a true blue movie star, but that movie is absolutely a cult classic. I love it. I'll just run through a few more. How to Train Your Dragon, one of the better animated films of the year. The Trip, the original Trip, was released this year. That's become like a really fun franchise. Jennifer Lawrence hit the scene with Winter's Bone. I think a good movie.
Another Oscar nominee.
See, that's one of the ones that I was diddling around with too, because it's like, J-Law, she was like the big thing that award season because of that performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then just for like kind of the smaller critically acclaimed movies, one of my favorite Sofia Coppola movies, but maybe her least seen movie, came out this year, Somewhere. I love that movie.
Yeah. Good, man.
The
Good father-daughter film too.
Senna, about the Formula One driver, is a really good documentary. There's a movie called Meek's Cutoff, which is like a play on a Western, like an anti-Western from Kelly Reichardt that came out this year that's really good. And the last one I'll mention is Animal Kingdom, an Australian crime thriller that was kind of the dawn
that's a brutal film.
Ben Mendelsohn. Really, really fun, dark movie.
Yeah, it's good shit. Nick, did you have any over there that you were thinking about throwing out there but didn't make it?
Yeah, I mean, aside from, as Jay already mentioned, Winter's Bone, I also threw The Kids Are All Right in there. Really nice, kind of quiet little movie. Annette Bening, Mark Ruffalo, Julianne Moore in that. Really good. Nobody wanted Fred the movie. Nobody thought, oh my damn it! Nobody wanted that on the. Nobody.
I almost took it. I almost took it over Inception, but I decided not to.
It was between that and Social Network for me. I was really tossing those two back.
You're either a Jackass guy or a Fred guy.
Yeah, right. You can't have both. Yeah, Jay couldn't have both. Well, for me, most of mine got mentioned, although we didn't talk about The Runaways, which is like really, I love that movie. I know it gets shit, but I'm a case to apologize. I love Kristen Stewart, Dakota Fanning, and they play The Runaways. So Joan Jett and Sherry Curry, and really the first like all female hard rock band to like break big in popular culture back in the 70s, and I love that movie so much. Another horror movie that I was thinking about picking instead of Let Me In is a movie called The Crazies, which is essentially
that's
just
a fun movie.
We have Timothy Olyphant in that film. I mean, essentially it's a zombie film, but it's a remake of a George A. Romero film from, I believe, the 60s. Another zombie movie that he did that was lesser known because of Night of the Living Dead and everything else. So that's a really good one. And what else? Tangled, the other Disney animated film that year that's nowhere close to Toy Story 3, but I think it's a really sweet story. Rapunzel, the story of Rapunzel, a really horrible, evil mother in that film. So Tangled would be the other animated film that kind of jumps out to me this particular year.
And Despicable Me. Sorry, Loy Sauce.
Yeah, Despicable Me just for Loy Sauce. He was so pissed at the Golden Peas, of which Jay was a presenter last year. Jay, thank you for being a Golden Peas presenter last year.
Or sunglasses.
You're a cold open aficionado and you're a presenter of awards. Yeah. You do it all, man. But I don't know if you heard, Nick, but like Minions got nominated for Best Animated and Loy Sauce lost his shit. He's like, why do the people pick this? I'm like, dude, calm down. Like, it's okay. It didn't win.
He is not a fan of the Little Minions. The first Despicable Me is not a bad movie. I think that franchise has just been literally a license to print money, like yellow pill shaped money ever since. And that's all they've kind of done with it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the first one. I think the first one is genuinely not a bad film.
Well, Nick, I know I speak for you as well. Jay, you're a delight, man. I love having you. I really did.
Anytime, I mean, guys, especially if there's a draft.
80s champ,
the competition juices flowing.
80s champ, 2010. I guess we're going to go through the years since Nick kind of is making us do that now. Honestly, that's what I thought about doing. Number one, because it gives us like 8 other drafts we just got like right in the pocket, like that we don't have to think about, what do we want to do for a topic, that's why I landed on this, because I was just like, initially we had planned on having Jay on so long ago. We were going to do summer movies. That's right. It was something that was related to the calendar, and now it's like not even wouldn't make any sense.
I was too glued to that idea in my mind as I was trying to come up with a new draft idea, and I was like, I don't want to do, it's horror season, I don't want to do some weird horror thing and please Gerald. I'm all about not pleasing Gerald on this show. You all know that.
Oh, that's fair.
So
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, this gives us a lot. It gives us a lot of time to really and I'll be honest, because like obviously Epic Film Guys lived through this whole decade, and like, your podcasting journeys and everything like that as well began in this decade, probably. At least I'm pretty sure on that. Yep. So I think it's something that a lot of our peers as well, Gerald, will be able to kind of dial into as well. Cause I've seen more movies from this decade than probably any other, just because of obviously the uptick in watching things for the show. But yeah, just to echo that, I mean, like I said, it's been too many years probably since we shared the mic, but I remember sharing more than a few microphones with Jay during the legendary So I Married a Movie Geek drafts, even though my list isn't quite as, I don't have a weird number one or some off the wall random thing in there like I normally do. I couldn't do it this time, I guess.
I mean, it does look like a well-rounded board there. I think everybody has a pretty stout team for the most part. I mean, each of you definitely got picks that I wanted, so I'll put it that way. This is not my perfect team that I have over there on the pink column, but
can't believe he snaked Blue Valentine from me on the last spot. Man,
that rules. Yeah. That was really, that made the journey worth it. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, marriage is great. It was great being here.
Let's
go watch Blue Valentine.
You guys are doing the 2010. This is 1 year away from my favorite movie of all time. I hate that I can't.
Oh boy!
But we'll see who gets
2011 or 2009.
2011. So assuming y'all are going through the 10.
Oh, you're going to say the Tree of Life, aren't you?
Yeah, somebody will pick that, I assume.
Yeah, nobody's taking the Tree of Life between these two dudes. I'll tell you that, right?
So
We'll invite JD on for it, and we'll just let JD talk about it for like 3 straight hours. We'll just leave the microphone.
It'll be the only
4-hour.
It'll be the only movie JD takes in the whole board. It'll just be the Tree of Life.
Believe it or not, just by sheer numbers, I like that movie more than he does. So
yeah, I believe it. Wow. Jay, tell them where they can find you, man. I know you're doing Awards Watch, and you and Ryan got your thing going on. Tell everybody where they can look you up, because you're the man, and they should look you up. So where can they find you?
Yeah, again, guys, thank you all for having me. It's always a good time. Nick, great to get on the mic again. Twitter at Mr. J Ledbetter. Very rarely tweet these days, but I don't know. Maybe something will pop up. Yeah, like you said, Awards Watch. The Awards Watch podcast feed is where my podcast is with the great Ryan McQuaid, who I'm sure would love to come on this show.
Yeah, for sure.
And we have a podcast called Director Watch where we run through directors' filmographies. We just finished the aforementioned Terrence Malick, director of Tree of Life and many other films that mainstream audiences largely reject. But he is my favorite director of all time, so that was a real joy. We've covered other people like Paul Thomas Anderson and all different kinds of filmmakers. So check that out on the Awards Watch podcast feed. Any writing I do every now and then you can find on awardswatch.com. But that's it. Yeah, great time. This was awesome.
Love you, man. Thanks so much for being here, Jay. You were a blast, buddy. Nick, bye.
What's coming up next week? Yeah, tell them what's coming up next week.
I don't know, because this is airing in November.
No,
I got to look at the schedule.
Right now,
I have to look at the schedule because this doesn't come out until November. Hold on. Now I do have to.
I get nothing but shit from Gerald about not looking at the schedule or not looking at the spreadsheet often enough. So I know we're recording this well in advance of when it's actually gonna release. So I wanted to hold his feet to the fire here while he's in his cult leader unbutton. Let me see if I can get that other button there. All
right, hold on. So next, should I come back in or should I
just keep going? Just go.
Dan's gonna leave all that in. Yeah, he's gonna leave all that in anyway.
Is this the first time I've ever podcasted? This is crazy.
It is actually. Yeah, second. We did one last night. It didn't go well. So next week, we will be covering Emilia Perez. Speaking of the awards season, that is an awards contender.
The hell is that?
Apparently, it's a musical starring Miss Selena Gomez. And then Netflix got the rights to it. So that's what we are planning to cover next week, according to my schedule that Nick made me look at.
There you go.
Emilia Perez. All right, Jay, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. That was our 2010 movie draft, guys. It'll be back to our regular programming next week, and we'll have more movie drafts for you guys in the future, of course, which I guess the next one will be 2011. So we'll have to get on that and see who's going to make the bids for Tree of Life. You guys can have it. Nick, you can have Tree of Life.
Again, my favorite movie of all time. If it's not selected as one of the 18 best movies of its year, that will hurt.
So, I don't know. I don't know if I can bring myself.
I feel like we gotta get like JD or just somebody on the show that we know is going to pick it. Otherwise,
Ryan would probably pick it, right? Ryan loves that shit too, right?
Yes, he does.
Ryan loves that shit.
The champ might trash us on social media after that, Gerald. If we put out that draft list and he doesn't see it on there, that might be it. He might come back to Twitter with a vengeance.
That could be it. All right, guys. I love both of you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for drafting movies. And we will see everyone next week. Thank you so much for tuning in.